Revolutionary greetings, comrades. We meet once again. This evening, we are discussing politics. Last night, we spoke about documentation. A number of you participated, and we hope that when we discuss politics, you will also participate in the manner in which you participate when we discuss documentation. So if you have political questions, kindly write them in the comment section. We'll try our level best to respond. Thank you so much for those who have joined us. Let's have this conversation on political matters. What is dominating the news today is the issue of farms in Zimbabwe. You remember that some 20 years ago or so, there was a land reform, chaotic as it was. People moved onto the farms, occupied the farms. There was a group which was recycled for the purposes building their homes like you will do in a normal communal land. And then there are those small-scale farmers that occupied what is known as A2 farms. So government today then says that because for the last 20 years or so, people were operating on a 99-year lease. The land owned by the state, you granted a 99-year lease. But now government, in an announcement it made, says you are now allowed to get title deeds, meaning that you can now approach a commercial bank, borrow money for you to do some work on your farm, to get fund loans from the banks. Also, this means that now the land is now in your name. You have a title deed. It has now value, meaning that you can sell the land. So those that then got land some 20 or so years ago now can sell the land. I've seen some few adverts where people are selling the land that they received from 2000, meaning that people that received the land for free are now allowed to sell the land. And the minister says that those selling the land should sell land to indigenous Zimbabweans. We are going to give later on, not this evening, but later on, when we've carried out a proper scientific study on this and give a proper scientific analysis. But what this basically means is that given the state of the economy in Zimbabwe, few indigenous people will be able to raise the capital to buy the land or to buy those farms. It means that while government says you sell to indigenous Zimbabweans, we are going back. You remember the Lancaster House Agreement, which says said it was a willing buyer, a willing settler. If a white commercial farm wanted to sell, they had to sell to government. And these farms at the time, their prices were higher and the government couldn't afford to buy. So we are going there. So those that own the land, who in the majority as NPF members, they will sell the land or put their land out for sale. They will then not have buyers in Zimbabwe because of the economic situation. So you will then get those in the diaspora that have capital, including whites, which government says they should not buy land if they are not indigenous Zimbabweans. So they will end up selling land to whites because government has been supporting these commercial farmers, but there was no production on the farms. There's so much debt, and the government can't settle that debt. So this is what is threatening today. Like I'm saying that we will organize a proper discussion on that so that we give a scientific analysis on what it means. One of the things that we'll also have to do is that in this scientific analysis, you need to go province by province or district by district to say, for instance, I come from Mthwakazi district. Who benefited from the land in Mthwakazi district? We know that in areas where there was this resettlement, where villages were being created, which I'm not sure whether this is affected. You will know that in places like in Caesar North, the likes of Andrew Langer, for political expediency, they will go and get people outside in Caesar district for the purposes of winning an election. The late Kaya Moyo also was doing that in Bulilima. So they will go and they take people outside the district, whether in Rosape, whether in Gutu, put them there for the purposes of an election or winning the election. So these are the issues that we are going to be looking into when we carry out this analysis on what this means. But when I was reading another opinion piece, is that which we agree with, is that we have gone back to the land reform program, as it were, because land must belong to the state. You recall in this platform we discussed the proposal which was presented or which was adopted at the Chitungwiza National Working People's Convention on February 26 to 28, 1999, that land should belong to the state. But now, those that got land, they are then going to get title deeds. So if you have input on that, please do write your comments so that we continue with this discussion. Comrade Fuyana, Alpheus Fuyana, who's Secretary of International Relations of Mthwakazi Republic Party, MRP, writes, he says, GS, he calls me GS, GS, do you still believe Zimbabwe can be liberated and Ndebelers attain a semblance of equality? In one of your videos, you persisted that as leaders and quoted marks were failed Matebeleland. I fully agree with you on that, but I challenge you to, in your private meetings with powers that be, whisper them on the unequalness of the needs for documents by various Zimbabweans and emphasize the greater needs of documentation by Mthwakazi nationals. Comrade Fuyana, our program as the Zimbabwe Communist Party, we acknowledge that the liberation of Zimbabwe is not complete. This is why we say we need to complete our liberation, completing the liberation of Zimbabwe. And we argue in our document that completing the liberation of Zimbabwe means that we place the economy as a whole to the people of Zimbabwe. So what we have in Zimbabwe is a neo-colonial state, just like any other country in the African continent. And in our case in Zimbabwe is that the looting class is in power. This issue of land also demonstrates that the looting class is in power, because the people that then took the land, fertile land for that matter, and the others have about 20 and so forth. Remember when Bonnie Mugabe was went to court to divorce her husband, the issue of 21 farms or so came into the picture. So you can imagine if Bona were to sell each farm for something like $300,000 US, how much is she going to pocket, and how many people own that the number of farms in ZANU-PF. So yes, the liberation of Zimbabwe is not complete. Then your question is, can then the Ndebele attain semblance of equality? From a class perspective, The working class and peasantry are the victims in Zimbabwe across ethnic divide. They are the victims. So when we advocate for the dictatorship of the proletariat, is that the working class, be they Ndebele, Shona, Karanga, Tonga, they should be in charge of the Zimbabwean economy. It is not going to be easy to complete the liberation of Zimbabwe because it requires unity. ZANU-PF is entrenched. It controls state apparatus in Zimbabwe. It is not going to be easy, but it is a task that we must not give up on. And also, in our political and economic program, we argue that we need to build a national democratic economy based on national planning, linked, which is key, linked to devolution of power to the people. And in our Congress, we discussed the question of public servants that are being deployed deployed across the country. We said that it is wrong, and we condemn that you deploy a person from Rusape to teach in my primary school in Mthwakazi district Mbizingwe when they cannot speak the local language, just as it would be wrong for me to go and teach grade 1 in Zwimba when I'm not fluent in the local language there. So these are the issues that we are dealing with. So the question of equality, we don't view it from an ethnic standpoint, but we view it from a class perspective. Then you say, you challenge me to raise the issue of documentation for Mthwakazians outside what we do of Zimbabweans. The difficulty with that, I know that there are people that have gone or did meet with Minister Mthwakazi on this question. And Minister Mthwakazi said the best way out of this is for people to apply for asylum, because you know that South Africa recognizes Zimbabwe. It does not recognize Mthwakazi as a state, right? Because as it is now, Mthwakazi is not a state. So the ANC-led government, even the government of national unity, will not grant documents to Mthwakazi activists in terms of permits, but they have a right to apply for asylum documents, which they will be granted. So, but to advocate for special permits for them, I am not sure whether that is going to work, but given the nature of the relationship between the Zimbabwean and South African government, the ANC, ZANU-PF, I don't see that happening. And then Comrade Fiana continues, says, while I agree that ZANU-PF needs to go, I still insist that Shonas love ZANU-PF, and it is the best thing that happened to them since they emerged from the putrid swamps of Tanganyika. Zimbabwe is a cancerous, purified entity, and to save ourselves, we must pursue for the liberation of Mthwakazi. Rather, lest we are condemned to a leprous entity, we must save ourselves while we can. Like I said in the other video, that I respect Comrade Alpheus Fuyane and other comrades in MRP on their Mthwakazi activism, but I come from this background which says that we must unite the people of Zimbabwe across ethnic lines. We must complete the liberation of Zimbabwe. We have had a discussion that it is a ZANU-PF that continues to divide the people of Zimbabwe. We have discussed the formation of ZANU-PF and how over the last 44 years it has used the question of ethnicity to divide our society, to promote what we call ethnic patronage, to commit a genocide, to marginalize other sections of society. Even within the Shona umbrella, when Mugabe was in power for 37 years, the Zulu were in charge. After Mugabe was ousted and Mnangagwa took over, the Karanga are now in charge. So if you look into the military, into the police and the other key state institutions, it is the Karanga that is in power in Zimbabwe. So the politics of ethnicity must be dealt with. Zimbabwe belongs to all of us. The other day we were discussing the question of belonging, that we all belong to Zimbabwe, and we have a right as Zimbabweans to participate in the politics of Zimbabwe. We have a right as Zimbabweans to stand for any office. It is critical, therefore, that all of us must unite, and we agree that the only way to rebuild our economy is that the first step is that we must remove ZANU-PF from power. We also need to liberate ZANU-PF supporters themselves. And we can only liberate ZANU-PF supporters by intensifying political education. Part of this political education will have to be carried out through social media, as we are discussing now. And in our next engagement, as part of what is to be done, which we started on Sunday, we'll be discussing how we can use social media to propagate our message, so that our message gets to communities. Because we say we cannot outsource the task of completing our liberation to any person other than ourselves. Thank you so much, comrades. That was the discussion. We will meet again to continue to discuss these critical issues, so that we find a solution to our problems in Zimbabwe. We must end the political, economic, and the social crisis in Zimbabwe. Please write your comments in the comment section. Let us continue to engage. Otherwise, Amandla, comrades.